I can't forget the day we met. Your eyes so blue, me piercing through. I can't forget the day we met. Your smile so bright, it made me swoon.
Hi and welcome to Just Homemade. It's my first Just Homemade cooking video officially. The other videos that I have put online are just ones that I made at home for my daughter. So this one is kind of like an official Just Homemade video, and I'm going to teach you how to cook a butter beans curry. So I have got a couple of tools and utensils which I would like to first introduce you to for better cooking practice, so stay tuned for that. Okay, so first up, sorry for the croaky voice. First up, we've got some measuring tools, okay? So you will see here that this is your normal measuring spoons. It's actually a very good tool to invest in. You have the tablespoon measure, the 1 teaspoon measure, half a teaspoon measure, and the 1/4 teaspoon measure. Now I have two sets because this particular one gives me the half a tablespoon measure as well as the 1/8 of a teaspoon measure, which is good for when people say add, or recipes say add a pinch of salt or a pinch of something. So this 1/8 of a teaspoon helps me to get the pinch measurement correct. Okay, so it's very easy to find these, I'm sure, in most home stores or Pick and Pay here in South Africa, ShopRite, and any at-home stores will have these measuring spoons. Then the other good investment is having cup measurements, accurate cup measurements. Now in the past I have always used a mug, and to be precise, I've used this mug. So the mugs always tend to give you a lot more. So a full mug gives me 1.5 cups, or 1.25 cups, not 1.5 cups. So 1.25 cups is a lot more, and hence my recipes would always yield a lot more in terms of cake measures, etc. So I purchased these cup measurements. So you have 1 cup, you have half a cup, a 1/4 cup, sorry, 1/3 of a cup, and a 1/4 cup. So it's quite useful to have. And if you're using a recipe that says 3/4 of a cup, you would use 3 of this, okay, because this is 1/4. And if you're using 2/3, you'd use 2 measures of this. And of course, half and 1. So if it's 3 cups, obviously 3 of this or 2 of that. Now I've also purchased these. They're very handy. They actually come off the grip that it has. They're silicone cup measures. They store very nicely, and if you press them out, they come out as to hold stuff or whatever goods that you're using to cook. And it comes in the usual 1 cup, half a cup, 1/3 of a cup, and a 1/4 cup. The next thing to invest in is a pressure cooker, especially if you are cooking beans, legumes, dals, mung dals, and this chana dal, which is gram dal. So I bought this contraption because I really, at this point in time, could not invest in a huge pressure cooker. They're quite cheap though on takealot.com. The big ones, the Russell Hobbs, for example, was selling under 1,000 Rand, and it's about a 6 liter, and that's very handy. It's actually something that I'm aiming to get next, but this one was about 460 Rand, and the guy in the Indian shop was kind enough to give me a discount, so I got it for about 420. So this is basically a pressure cooker where the knobby here on the top comes off. Let's try and get that off. So it comes off, There's no rocket science to this. You don't have to screw this on. You just place it in. Okay, it clicks shut. It has a safety hook here, but what I don't like about this is underneath there's no protection for the handle. So when the food is ready and you have to unhook the lid, you know, from the pot, you know, you tend to get burned. So what I do is I use a cloth or a pot holder just to make sure that the grip is safe. So this also, you know, in order to use it, to cook it on, it's, you know, a little bit of you got to kind of, I have to get a tutorial. Sorry, I'm using one hand, so it's going to be a little bit difficult. So you basically align everything like that, and then you just kind of press it down and hook this into this part here, and then it's nice and tight. So cooking the beans or the dals or any kind of legume, you need to know that, you know, it will work well if you soak it first. So soak it overnight, just maybe, you know, using 1 cup. If you're just making a small amount, then you just soak up 1 cup, because 1 cup actually yields quite a bit of butter beans. So I want to show you what 1 cup of butter beans actually has come up to. So that's 1 cup of butter beans soaked and boiled. Okay, so you can see it's actually quite a lot. So 1 cup does yield a fair amount, which can be used for you know, maybe 2 meals or 2.5 meals or 3 meals, in fact, depending on your appetite. So now we're going to just go ahead and do our prep in terms of how we're going to actually cook the meal. The important thing about the pressure cooker that I forgot to mention is that in this type of pressure cooker, which is an aluminium pressure cooker, heavy base, very heavy, that you can actually saute your spices in here and throw in your soaked beans, and then you close up the lid and let it cook. With the other pressure cooker, I'm not too certain if you can do that, if there is a saute function, but generally it saves a lot of time. I mean, you know, compared to cooking, boiling and cooking beans, which takes you to boil the beans about 1 hour, and then to cook the beans another half an hour, 1.5 hours, compared to that and this, I mean, this gives you a cooked butter beans curry or sugar beans curry in 15 to 20 minutes. So, you know, provided your beans are actually soaked and you know, prepared at the night before. So, and also if you're using potatoes in it, you can saute your spices in the pan and add the potatoes in, and then add the beans, because the potatoes also will take about 15 to 20 minutes to cook, and then, you know, it's all ready. So and then when the pressure cooker is ready, then you know your curry is done. So I would just like to now stop and do the preparation for the broad beans or the butter beans curry. Okay, so we are ready with our prep. So what I have first is some of the whole spices. We have a black ilachi. Okay, this is a black cardamom. You normally get these in spice shops. And then we have aniseed, star anise. Basically, it's just broken into little pieces. We have a few cloves, about 3 or 4 cloves, you can see. And then we have about 3 cinnamon sticks. 3 cinnamon sticks. And then we have a bay leaf, right? So these are the hard spices that I'm going to be using into the curry when we're sauteing it. Then we have a half an onion. This is half a large onion, and it is for this particular quantity of beans, which I showed you earlier, already soaked and boiled. Or you could have the pre-boiled that's available in a can that you would get in a store. Okay, so it's just dripping. So that's basically the quantity of beans that I'm going to be using. And this is the onion, half an onion finely chopped, and it's a large onion. If you're using small to medium onion, it would be one small onion, and it would be just about 3/4 of a medium-sized onion. Now here I've got stacked all of my spices that I'm going to be using. So just before we proceed with that, I want to show you the tomatoes. So what I normally do is I purchase tomatoes, whole tomatoes, and then I liquidize them and I cook it in cook it in onion. With onion, I saute the onion. I then add a little bit of garlic, a little bit of ginger. When I say a little bit, I would say for about 6 tomatoes, because I cook it all in bulk, and then I package it in plastic containers, and I keep it in the fridge. So when I'm cooking a curry and I need a bit of tomato, I use a tablespoon of this particular mixture, and I put it in the curry. All it has is a bit of garlic. A bit of garlic for 6 tomatoes would be about 1 teaspoon. 1 teaspoon of garlic, half a teaspoon of ginger, and some curry powder, which is 1 teaspoon. This is a curry powder that I use. You could find one that is suitable for you. I just find the taste is a lot better with that. And I add to that some paprika, and I add to that some of the Kashmiri chili powder. So you'd see that this is Kashmiri chili powder, and it is actually the mild variety. It's not in focus, but it is the mild variety. You get them in extra hot, hot, medium, and mild. So this is mild, and I use about a teaspoon of that. So let's see if it's in focus now. Yeah, kind of in focus. Okay, so let's then begin with the spices. So the powdered spices. So I've got the whole spices here. Now I'm going to do the powdered spices. So for this quantity, which is about 1 tin of butter beans that you'd get in a store, or 1 cup, or actually this is 1.5 cups of beans that's now boiled out of the 1. So out of the 1 cup that you would add to boil, you'd get about 2 cups of beans. So I'm adding 1 tablespoon of the curry powder. I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of the Kashmiri chili powder. I'm then going to add paprika, another teaspoon. This is cumin powder. I'm going to add a teaspoon of this as well. Teaspoon of cumin powder. And this is coriander powder. Another teaspoon of coriander powder. Separate my hard spices from my powdered spices. Okay. Then I'm going to add turmeric powder. About half a teaspoon. Half a teaspoon of turmeric powder. I'm going to add fennel powder. Okay. And this I'm going to add just a 1/4 teaspoon. Okay, so 1/4 teaspoon of fennel powder. And I'm going to add garam masala. I'm going to add half a teaspoon of garam masala. There you go. And I'm also going to add cardamom powder. and I'm going to add half a teaspoon. This is also a hard spice, which is cumin, but I'm going to add this when the curry has already been braised in the pot. Okay, so these are my spices now prepared, and I do this simply because it's a lot easier, because you've got so many spices to add into the pot when you've just braised the food, that, or the beans, that you know, by the time you open each container and add the spice, you're probably going to burn your food. So it's best to prepare them beforehand, so it's a lot easier to cook and handle during the cooking process. So I also have here ginger, crushed ginger alone. Okay, I prefer using separate ginger and separate garlic because it gives you the right amount of you know, taste and texture that you need in terms of spiciness. So ginger also gives it heat, so you just need to add a little less ginger if you want it mild. So I'm going to add half a teaspoon of ginger to my spice plate. Let's get it here so you can see. Okay, and then I'm going to add, this is garlic. I'm not advertising the brand, so it's locally made. I'm going to add 1 teaspoonful of garlic. Okay, this is crushed garlic, and I'm going to add a teaspoonful of garlic. In fact, I think I'm going to add another half teaspoon, so 1.5 teaspoons of garlic. There you go. Okay, now all that is prepared and done. My onions are chopped and ready. Okay, so now all we do is and of course we've got our tomato already, you know, prepared, and it's very handy, especially if you're cooking vegetarian curries or any kind of curry that requires a tomato-based gravy. It's very convenient, especially if you're pressed for time. I find that this is the most convenient way for me to handle my cooking. Okay, so now let's go to the stove. Okay, so some last minute additions. Okay, so here's our prep already done. This is the ginger garlic, the powdered spices and the whole spices. My whole spice, which is cumin, for later. The tomato prepared, and then I've added some curry leaves as well, and 1 potato cut in quarters. If you wish to add more potatoes, like another one, which would be 8 quarters, you could do that. But then remember, when you add extra potatoes, you need to add extra curry powder and a little bit more. So instead of you know, half a teaspoon of each, you probably add 1 teaspoon of each spice. You know, just slightly increase the quantity. So on the stove, I have a pot. I'm going to use a normal pot. I'm not going to use the pressure cooker because I know that some people out there might not have a pressure cooker. So I'm just using a normal, this is my Nutri-Stol pot, which is over 30 years old. It's gone through some, you know, wear and tear. As you can see, the handle is missing, but it's still good to use. And I've got the temperature on 3. I'm going to turn it up to 4, just that's medium to high. The pot is quite warm. I have had it warming for a while. So now I'm going to add some sunflower oil, and you know, you could use any oil that you wish. I use sunflower oil, sometimes I use coconut oil, and you could even use olive oil. So for this, I'm going to add about say half a cup of oil. Actually, no, not even. Less than that, say maybe less than a quarter even. So it just has to cover the base of the pot like that. Okay, just covering the base of the pot, not too much, and this allows the onions to saute properly. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to add the hard spices. Okay, so I'm just going to throw in the bay leaf and the the cinnamon, the aniseed, the cloves, and the black black ilachi, which has kind of popped out. You need to just find it very quickly. Oh no, there we go. Right. Star anise. Right, so now that is busy doing its thing, I'm going to add the onion. Just give me a second. I can do this properly. It's a bit difficult. Smells divine. So I'm going to turn on my extractor fan. There you go, onions. Just going to stir it around a bit. And I'm now going to add my curry leaves. Okay, here we go. So we give it some time to saute and to brown, and once it's browned, we will then add in our ground spices and ginger and garlic. So we'll come back when it's ready. Okay, so as we can see, the onions are browning quite nicely. The aroma is great. It's wonderful, delicious already. So now at this point, we're ready to add the ground spices and the ginger and garlic. Okay, so we're going to do that. Just add all the spices and the ginger and garlic. Sorry. There we go. Now we'll just stir it all in so that it can brown. I'm just going to turn the heat down because to 3. Because what happens with these Nutri-Star pots tends to hold a lot of heat, and at this point we don't want any of the spices to burn. So now that the spices have been mixed with the onion, we're going to add our beans and our potatoes. Okay, as mentioned before, the beans have been pre-boiled, and if you're doing this with canned beans, this is also, you know, the stage that you would add them in. Okay, just stir it all in so that the spices are nicely mixed with the beans and the potatoes. Okay, so get it all nicely mixed. Okay, now because the liquid was cold, the beans are cold, they were boiled and kept in the fridge for a little bit, for probably 2 days. So now I'm going to add, turn up the heat to 4 again, so that's medium to high. And now I'm going to add salt. So for the benefit of this video, I'm actually going to add salt using a measure, because normally I use my hands. Okay, so if I had to do this, okay, what measure would this be? Let's see. Okay, so that's about half a tablespoon of salt, right? Where is it? Half a tablespoon of salt. But so this is for the beans, and then I'm going to add a little bit more for the potatoes, which would be about that much, which would be about, let's see, what is that? Half a teaspoon. No, it's less than that. It's about a quarter teaspoon. Say about a quarter. So half a tablespoon plus a quarter teaspoon salt. Okay, and of course you can always taste it a little later, and if it needs more you can always add more from the top. Okay, now is the time that I'm going to add my hard spice. So I'm going to add 1 teaspoon. So 1 teaspoon of cumin. Just sprinkle it on the top. Okay, and then I've saved a little bit of onion like that, say about 1 tablespoon, and I'm just going to add that in as well from the top. The color looks good, and it's now going to cook in the pot. I'm going to cover it, and oopsie. Okay, so cover the pot. It's on 4. I'm going to give it about 10 minutes or so, and then I'm going to keep checking on it to make sure that it does not burn at the bottom, and then we will check if the gravy is good enough, and after that we will then add our tomato. So we'll see you soon. So while the beans is cooking, I just thought I'd share a quick tip. I'm going to need coriander for my, the end of cooking to garnish with. And I wanted to show you how I store my coriander. I learned this on one of the cooking Facebook groups called Appetite. You need to wash your coriander and put it in a container, plastic container with an airtight lid, and put an egg in it. And it basically keeps it quite fresh. I've got this going on for about a week now, and the leaves still look good. So yeah, that's tip. And then also the other tip I wanted to mention is look how good this is looking. Is that if you are using the canned beans, you need to drain off the liquid from the canned beans and rinse them off. I forgot to mention that, sorry. The beans that you've seen me using with the liquid, that's basically the water in which it was boiled in, and it had a bit of salt in it. And I don't normally use the liquid or the brine, if they call it, that comes with the beans that has been canned. I always drain that off and use the beans only, and I add water if I need to, boiled water if I need to get the gravy going. But this here was boiled at home, hence I used it with the, cooked it with the liquid. Okay, so as you can see, it's doing quite well, and if I had to pinch the beans, you can see it's already quite soft. So now all I'm doing is I'm waiting for the potato to cook, because it's still a little bit hard. So once the potato is soft, that is the point in time in which I will add the tomato. And then once it's all cooked, the potatoes are soft, I turn off the heat, and then I add my coriander. So we'll see you later. Okay, so now as you can see, the curry is cooking very well. I've added a little bit more water, about just a 1/4 cup, because it was kind of sticking to the bottom of the pot, and I needed the potatoes to cook as well. So now I'm going to just test the potatoes. It's been cooking for about 10 minutes, and you can see the knife is going through the potato. It's not fully cooked, but it's kind of half cooked. Okay, you see, it's not too hard, and it's kind of half cooked. So now I've just got a tablespoon of this tomato chutney, and I'm going to add it to the curry at this stage. And then just going to mix it in. Now, the thing I forgot to mention is that because I've run out of hing, so hing is like asafoetida, that's the English name, but it's called hing in Hindi. And hing is basically used to help the digestive system to digest the beans, because normally legumes, beans, and food that you need to soak up that come in dried form, and you need to soak it up before you cook it. Usually our digestive system has difficulty to break them down because of the complex sugars that it has. So you need to get hing, and you need to use for this quantity you would use about half a teaspoon of hing. Okay, that's one of the things that I normally add in my ground spices preparation. So I just add it in with the ground spices as well when it's braising. So now I've got a half a teaspoon measure. Let's just see. Yep, half a teaspoon measure. And I'm going to add some brown sugar. Okay, just half a teaspoon. What this does is it helps with the acidity of the tomatoes that we've just added in. And it breaks that down a little bit. So okay, just half a teaspoon, and that should do the trick. And as you can see, the water is kind of drying up. Oops, steaming up the camera lens. So it is kind of drying up, and at this point you just let it cook continuously like that until the potatoes are nice and soft, and then you'll turn off the heat and add your coriander, which I have now chopped. It's about a tablespoon. Yeah, about a tablespoon of coriander, and that would just be used for garnish. Okay, so that's it for now. We'll check back later. Okay, so the potatoes are now cooked. I have kind of pierced it with the knife, and the knife goes through and it's done. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just give it a stir. Okay, and you see it's thickened up a bit, and it's up to the individual. If you want to leave it like this, leave it to this consistency, you can. Alternatively, you can add more boiled water, to make it a little bit thin. As you can see, there's not a lot of oil floating on the top, so it's kind of reasonable in terms of health-wise and health-conscious people. So now I'm just going to add the coriander, sprinkle it a bit, and turn the heat off. Okay, turning the heat off, and there you go. All done. So you can enjoy this with some roti, puri, basmati rice, plain old bread, whatever you feel you can enjoy it with, and some sambal, salads, carrots grated with onion, chili, coriander, a bit of tomato and cucumber, and you have a nice wholesome vegetarian meal. Well, I think this one would be vegan, right? So there you have it. Good luck and all the best in making this dish. Take care.